Hello everyone, my name is Katie and welcome to the No Name Academy. These are some short videos on the new OWASP API Security Top 10. If you're already familiar with the OWASP API Security, there aren't too many changes, but there are some interesting additions and merges. You don't need to watch these videos in order. You can access them based on your interests or in what your concerns are, or skip to the new ones and the merged API issues. So this is API9, Improper Inventory Management. This is another returning issue, and it's actually really common in APIs where older versions that have security issues may just be left up for compatibility reasons, or you may not know what's actually out there, like what API endpoints are out there, which APIs may be publicly accessible, etc. So for example, let's say we've got Green, who's a security researcher, reports a bug in their API. Purple, the administrator, makes sure that they're fixed. But when that new version of the API is launched and developed, they're still supporting the old API, maybe for a limited time, like 6 months. But that old API is still connected to that same backend logic and database, which means that vulnerability is still there and is still exploitable. Even though in 6 months it won't necessarily be a problem, at the moment it's still vulnerable. It hasn't actually been fixed. Using an older versions of the API that are still accessible to essentially get a fixed vulnerability to exploit. The older API is usually connected to the same backend system, and depending on what vulnerabilities that old version has, it depends on what attackers can do. Maybe it's to perform a full attack, maybe it's just a single stage of an attack. But that older API is still connected up to the same components. And there's a very practical reason why, obviously, we don't want to break third-party applications that may be relying on that API, but it may be worth considering, should we fix an older version of the API for this security issue? Fundamentally, APIs are built for developers, and after a security bug is found, it's usually only resolved in the most recent version. Because APIs may not be decommissioned or may be decommissioned on a timeline, these third-party developers, we don't want to break it for them, will often have security bugs that are left unresolved. How can you resolve this? Keep an API inventory, know what's out there the best you can, know what endpoints are out there, what properties they have, etc. Consider whether or not backwards compatibility is necessary, or whether or not forcing everyone to use that new API may be a better option. The best you can, keep your documentation up to date and make sure it exists so you know, again, what's out there. Don't blanket refuse to fix older versions of the API. If they're still accessible, they're still vulnerable. Don't avoid deprecating older API endpoints because of things like cross-compatibility, really making sure we apply security updates even for legacy software. And if you're worried about these types of attacks, No Name can help. Its No Name discovery tools can locate and inventory all of your APIs and related risks, so you know what's actually out there and what's deployed.